Court will call case number 549370, State of Texas versus Uziel N. Munoz Cruz. I take it everybody's ready.
We are, Your Honor. Defense is ready, Your Honor.
All right. The charge is driving while intoxicated. State, I presume you're ready.
Your Honor, the charge is evade arrest or detention.
Pardon me. It is evade arrest or detention. I read the one above it. Are you ready to proceed, Mr. Edelman?
Ready, sir.
All right. And Mr. Freilich, you've already answered.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, let me just share an expression with you that I use. To err is human, forgive divine. To screw up, really screw up, you need a computer, and that's what just happened. We had an unexplainable situation. I couldn't get this damn thing to work, even with a couple of assistants. But we're ready now. So, State, do y'all want to waste your time, either one of you, with opening statements?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
All right. State, call your witness.
State calls Deputy Ebony Jones.
Say that again.
State calls Deputy Ebony Jones.
Deputy Jones, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that in this proceeding, the information and responses you submit will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. State, proceed, please.
Deputy Jones, how are you currently employed?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
I'll repeat the question. Deputy Jones, how are you currently employed?
I'm a deputy sheriff with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been a deputy with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
24 years.
Do you remember when you were first licensed as a peace officer in the state of Texas?
It would have been in 1997 as a peace officer.
And on the day of July 12th of 2017, were you a licensed peace officer?
Yes, I was.
Were you a licensed peace officer employed with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Now, were you on patrol that day?
Yes.
Were you on patrol that day by yourself or with another officer or deputy?
At the time, I was a training officer and I was training Deputy Joseph Trevino.
Were the two of you assigned to a patrol vehicle?
Yes.
And who was operating that patrol vehicle?
I was.
So Deputy Trevino, or I should say trainee Trevino, was your passenger?
Yes, it was his first day riding with me.
Now, how much of that day do you remember?
I can remember the incident because generally we don't get involved in high-speed chases that often, so I do remember the incident.
Do you remember what vehicle the defendant Uziel Munoz Cruz was in?
I remember the color. I can't tell you the make or model. I believe it was black. It might have been a sedan. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Would it assist you to be able to review the offense report?
Absolutely.
Now, Your Honor, I am experiencing my own technical difficulties because I am trying to log into the SharePoint that Kayleen gave to us this morning, and I'm not able to do so. So I do not have a way to first have the offense report marked before presenting it to Deputy Jones for review.
Well, if you can't show it to him, he's not going to be able to use it to refresh his memory, is he?
That is correct, sir.
Do you have an
Judge.
alternate? Yes, ma'am.
I think Miss Kayleen, don't you need to open your SharePoint for them to be able to access it?
I sent the links to the attorneys, but Edelman said he's having trouble opening it, so that's not me.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure I got the link, to be completely honest. Is it today?
Yes, between 10:50 and 11 this morning.
Yeah, I'm about 95% sure I didn't get any links to that this morning. I'm sorry.
Well,
Now, there
Oh,
is
no,
another.
it's in my spam folder. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Now, there,
What did you say, Mr. Freilich?
It was in my spam folder, so I just got it now.
Now, there is a way for me to share the offense report with Deputy Jones. However, I would only be able to do that without first marking it by Ms. Rivera. Will there be any objection from the defense if I do so?
So I guess my objection would be that it's an improper predicate. I don't know what it is you're showing him. Maybe what you could do is you could drag it into the chat, and the chat feature, show it to me or show it to Mr. Jones and see if he recognizes Deputy Jones and see if he recognizes it. And just change the name of the thing that you're dragging to Exhibit A, for example.
All right, Mr. Freilich, I have shared with you what I have labeled as State's Exhibit 1.
Do you label what?
What I have labeled as State's Exhibit 1.
Okay.
I'm downloading that right now. Opening it. Okay.
That thumbs up is an ambiguous expression.
I'm reviewing it. I don't have any objections to you tendering it to the officer. I have been provided this before.
In that case, may I tender the file to Deputy Jones for
Yes, sir.
to refresh his recollection?
You're talking about the report, not the file, right?
Correct.
And you've labeled it for purposes of this trial, State's Exhibit 1. There being no objection, I will permit you to submit it to the deputy. It is identified and there's no objection. All right.
Now, Deputy, I am going to share my screen with you. When you have finished reviewing the offense reports, when you have finished reviewing a page, let me know. I will scroll down to the next page. When you have finished reviewing the entire report, I will withdraw it, and you should testify purely from your memory.
Okay.
That is not the offense report, so please ignore it. There. Let me know when you would like me to scroll down, sir.
Scroll down. Could you scroll down, please? Scroll down, please. Scroll down, please.
For the record, since this is a bench trial, I am not reading any of this report since it's not in evidence.
Scroll down, please. 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 Okay, sir. I've reviewed the report.
Deputy, do you believe that your recollection is refreshed?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have stopped sharing the screen with all of the participants. Deputy Jones will now attempt to testify from his refreshed recollection. Now, Deputy Jones, at approximately what time did you encounter the vehicle that you eventually attempted to detain?
It was in the morning around 9 a.m.
And what was the make and model of that vehicle?
It was a black Chevy Impala.
Now, did you notice anything about that vehicle?
Yes. So it was traveling eastbound on IH-10 when I first saw it. Had no front license plate. So I had to go down and turn around to catch up to the vehicle. And we initiated the traffic stop, turned our lights on off of the access road on IH-10, and the vehicle pulled into a parking lot which was it's a truck stop. I believe it was the Travel Center on the corner of IH-10 and South Foster Road.
When you activated your overhead lights, how did the vehicle respond?
So the vehicle pulled into the travel stop. It pulled to the front of the building, and it stopped along the side of, in the parking lot, but along the side of Foster Road, nearest to an exit.
And how did you proceed?
So it was just a normal traffic stop. I walked to the vehicle. I believe I walked to the driver's side of the vehicle because, like I said, I was driving and Deputy Trevino would have been the passenger. So I walked to the driver's side of the vehicle and Deputy Trevino would have been walking towards the passenger side of the vehicle.
Were you able to see both of the occupants of the vehicle?
Yes.
Do you see one of the occupants of the vehicle in this proceeding today?
I'm sorry, I can barely understand the question. I didn't hear you.
Do you see the occupant of that vehicle in this proceeding today?
Yes, I do.
Now, were you able to make that identification even though some of the participants are wearing masks?
I believe I can identify the defendant.
All right, on what basis do you believe that you can identify the defendant?
I can see his eyes. I can't tell if his, without removing his face mask, but I do have to go to separate screens because of the way that my setup is. I have there's several different screens I have to slide to see him.
Your Honor, would the court please order Mr. Munoz Cruz to temporarily lower his mask for the purpose of identification?
Mr. Munoz Cruz,
If such is possible by the deputy.
Mr. Munoz Cruz, would you please lower your mask until I tell you to do otherwise?
Now, deputy, do you see the occupants of the vehicle in the proceeding?
Yes, Mr. Munoz Cruz is the passenger. He would have been the passenger of the vehicle.
And does he appear the same today as he did on the day that you first encountered him?
The day of his arrest, I believe he was shaven. His head was shaven.
Thank you. Your Honor, with the court's permission, Mr. Munoz Cruz may replace his mask.
Mr. Munoz Cruz, you may replace the mask, please. Recover yourself. Thank you.
Continuing, Your Honor. Deputy, after you made contact with the operator of the vehicle, what happened?
As soon as we were walking up to I was walking up to the vehicle. The vehicle took off and it evaded. We got almost to the driver's door, and the vehicle took off on us, and it went onto South Foster Road, going south at a high rate of speed.
How did you respond?
Myself and Deputy Trevino ran back to our patrol car, which was parked right behind them, probably 20 feet or less. And we initiated a pursuit and contacted our dispatch that the vehicle evaded us and was traveling high rate of speed south towards FM 1346.
Now, did you signal for the operator of the vehicle to stop the vehicle again?
Yes, when the vehicle took off on us, our lights were still activated because we were on a traffic stop and the vehicle did stop. So when the vehicle took off at a high rate of speed, I activated my siren to warn other traffic that a vehicle was evading and coming towards a busy intersection. 1346 is also known as East Houston Street, and it's a very busy intersection in that area.
How long approximately did this chase occur or last?
So it was about from the point of him leaving to where the vehicle crashed, because the vehicle crashed, and that's what ended the pursuit. It was about 2 to 3 miles.
And you stated that the pursuit ended when the vehicle came to a stop in some form of collision.
Correct.
What happened to the occupants of the vehicle after the vehicle came to a stop?
Both the driver and the defendant fled on foot.
Now, at the time that the defendant fled on foot, were you within sight of him as he fled?
Absolutely. Yes, I was.
Were your vehicle lights still on?
Yes, sir. They were still on. I actually pulled my vehicle into the intersection to keep other vehicles from colliding with it. So I stopped my patrol car behind the vehicle that had crashed. The defendant.
Was your vehicle siren activated?
No, I had my vehicle siren off at that time.
How many officers responded to the scene?
It was a vehicle pursuit, so there would have been at least 10 because we did have multiple subjects and they were evading on foot.
And do you remember in what direction the defendant fled?
Yes, he ran in a west direction from the point of impact through a field into a neighborhood, into a surrounding neighborhood.
And was he eventually located by any law enforcement officers?
Yes, sir, he was.
And was he eventually brought back to your physical presence?
Yes, sir, he would have been brought back to me and placed back in our custody.
And would you identify the occupant of the vehicle at that time?
Yes.
Do you remember how you identified him?
Yes, I had got a look at him as he was running. And when he was brought back to me, you could tell that he had just ran. He was in an excited state, breathing heavily and sweating.
All right. Did he identify himself to you?
Did he identify himself to me? I don't remember if he identified himself to me or if I got an ID out of his wallet because he was already in custody.
Thank you. Your Honor, pass the witness.
You have the witness, Mr. Freilich.
Yes, sir. My internet connection is a little unstable. I missed the last. He said, I'm sorry if I can get the last. Hello?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I apologize, Your Honor. My internet connection may be unstable and it is not. I may have missed the last question. Could I have the last question and answer read back?
Ms. Rivera?
Question. All right. Did he identify himself to you? Answer. Did he identify himself to me? I don't remember if he identified himself to me or if I got an ID out of his wallet because he was already in custody. That was the last answer.
My next question, Mr. Jones, do you recall what my client was wearing that day?
I do not.
Do you recall if he was wearing pants or shorts?
I don't remember.
What color t-shirt?
I don't remember what color t-shirt.
And is that due to the passage of time? Would you have been able to better recall that prior to this hearing?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Question is that because of passage of time?
Absolutely, yes, it is.
So because of the 5-year delay in this case, the 3-year delay in this case, it's harder to remember certain particular details. Is that correct?
Clothing details, yes. I can remember facial features, yes.
Why is that?
Because I'm pretty good with remembering faces.
Okay. And when the driver took off, where was that, before or after you and your training partner had approached the vehicle?
We were on foot.
Okay. Let me rephrase the question. So you and
Whatever you're saying, Mr. Freilich, I could not hear. And right now you're frozen.
Me either. Last thing I heard was, let me rephrase the question.
your
Andrew, did you hear Ms. Rivera?
had gotten out of the vehicle. I'm sorry, the person you were training had gotten.
Mr. Freilich, you're frozen and I'm not getting your question.
And worse than that, I'm not either. Nothing from you at this time, Mr. Freilich?
I'm sorry, Judge. I just got kicked offline.
I noticed. Okay, now you're back on, looks like.
Yes, sir. I'm actually going to switch Wi-Fi connections real briefly, if I could just have a moment.
Hey, believe me, I understand problems with a computer today.
Hello?
I
Anybody there?
heard a hello very clearly.
All right. So is that a better connection? Am I coming through more clearly?
At this point, you are, yes, sir.
Okay. I just switched internet connections, Your Honor, so I want to apologize.
No need to, sir.
All right. So, Deputy Jones, during the initial traffic stop, you and your partner had exited your patrol vehicle and approached the vehicle that you had tried to pull over at the truck stop, correct?
Yes.
At that time, and then the vehicle you had pulled over took off and continued driving, correct?
Yes.
Where were you? At what point were you when the other vehicle decided to take off?
I was nearer to the driver's door, if I believe correct.
So I want to make sure we have this correct, because you had approached the driver's side door. You had interacted with the driver. What did the driver tell you?
I don't believe I interacted with the driver before he took off on me.
Did you go to the passenger side at all?
My trainee would have approached on the passenger side.
So you didn't have a chance to even interact with the driver when the driver accelerated and took off from that spot. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you approached the driver's side door.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You approached the driver. I know, it's the internet. Did you and you approached the driver's side door, and did you get a good look at the driver?
Yes.
How long did you get a look at the driver?
As I was approaching,
before he took off?
Yes, because I could see the driver, because when you're doing a traffic stop, you're going to focus on the driver. And if you have a secondary officer, he usually focuses on the passenger. So when I'm walking up, I could see the driver.
And had you gotten parallel to the driver's side door when he took off?
I don't remember if I got actually parallel to the door or if I was at the back driver's side door.
But you got a good enough look at the passenger to identify him here in court 4 years later?
Yes.
But you didn't even approach the passenger side door. How did you get such a good look at the passenger?
Because I could see the passenger from the driver's side, the windows down.
And how long were you there at the driver's side door?
I don't know if I recall getting all the way to the driver's side door.
So you hadn't gotten all the way to the driver's side door. You hadn't yet interacted with the driver. You hadn't yet asked the driver any questions, but you got a good enough look at the passenger. Oh, and I'm sorry. And you said yourself just a few moments ago, if I could paraphrase, that your job approaching from the driver's side is to get a look at the driver and where his hands are.
I didn't say his hand. No, I didn't say his
I'm
hands.
sorry. What?
You watch the driver's side. If you are a double unit, and you're especially if you're training someone, you're going to look at everybody in the vehicle. So I do watch every occupant of the vehicle.
Could you estimate the amount of time you were at the driver's side door before they took off?
I don't want to make an estimation for it may be inaccurate.
Would it be less than 5 seconds?
No, it would have been a little bit more because we had to walk to the vehicle. So I believe it would have been more than 5 seconds.
More than 5 seconds. But you hadn't yet asked the driver any questions?
No.
Okay. So before you even got a chance to ask the driver any questions is when the driver took off and started away. Would you agree with me?
Could you say that one more time, please?
You hadn't yet had the opportunity to ask the driver any questions when the driver took off and started driving away. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you still got a good enough look at the passenger who was not on your side of the vehicle to identify that person in court years later.
I believe so.
Okay. And you can't remember what he was wearing.
No.
And you only saw him for a brief second.
At the
less
vehicle,
than
yes.
10 seconds.
At the side of the vehicle, yes.
And that's still enough that's still enough to beyond a reasonable doubt identify him in court this many years later.
Once he was in custody, yes. After he ran on foot, yes. At the side of the vehicle, no. But you do have to realize that your client ran from us and was apprehended. And after that apprehension, he was in my custody for a while.
Okay. And how do you know that was the same person that was in the vehicle?
Again, he was out of breath. Once he was apprehended, he was sweating, and I could see his face and I could recognize his facial details.
Again, you're on the other side of the vehicle. You observed him. Your job as a driver, you observed him from the other side of the vehicle and only for a few seconds, but yet you were able to identify him without remembering a single article of his clothing.
Exactly.
You know it was the same person.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't focus on clothing. I do focus on facial details because clothing can change. Facial details don't.
Fair enough. And the reason that the reason the driver was stopped is because he drove off in the middle of a traffic stop. Would you agree with me?
I apologize. I couldn't understand the question.
The reason that the driver was apprehended was because he drove off from a lawful traffic stop. Would you agree with me?
Yes, that would be a felony in the state of Texas. Evading motor.
What other and the driver would be detained for evading in a motor vehicle later. Is that correct? In charge of that crime?
Once the driver is apprehended, yes, that will be what the driver will be charged with.
Cool. What other offenses were you investigating the driver for?
I can't remember right now. I do know that the main one was the evading arrest with motor vehicle or detention motor vehicle.
Okay. And anything else specifically about the passenger before the evading case that you recall?
No, actually, the passenger was not breaking any laws other than evading on foot once the vehicle came to a stop.
No further questions. Pass witness.
A few additional questions for Deputy Jones, if the court will allow me.
Of course. Your witness now.
Deputy, after the vehicle came to a stop, how much time elapsed between when the vehicle came to a stop and when its occupants exited the vehicle?
So as soon as the vehicle came to a stop, they exited immediately and ran off foot in a westerly direction.
And were you able to see both of the occupants as they fled?
Yes.
Were you able to see them clearly?
Yes.
Was the occupant of the passenger side of the vehicle, did you see that person as the person exited the vehicle and fled the scene?
I saw him get out of the vehicle and run through the field. Yes.
Was that person later returned to your custody?
Yes, he was.
Approximately how much time passed from the moment that the person fled the vehicle to the moment that they were returned to your custody?
Maybe 5 to 10 minutes or less.
And was that, based off of your recollection, the same person that fled the vehicle?
Yes.
And was that the same person who was in the front passenger seat of the vehicle when it was initially detained?
Yes.
And do you see that person in this proceeding today?
Yes, sir.
Would you please identify that person for the court?
Yes. He is in the jumpsuit with the face mask over his face.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything else?
No further
Mr.
questions, Your Honor.
Fralick? Thank you. May the witness be excused.
Nothing. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Then, Mr. Munoz Cruz,
Yes.
well, you're the defendant. I'm not going to excuse you, obviously. All right. Mr. Edelman, next witness.
State has no further witnesses, Your Honor.
Mr. Fralick, any witnesses?
Judge, before we make a motion to the court,
You're
Judge,
freezing on me.
do I need to repeat that?
Wait, the last I heard was
Okay.
before we make a motion to the court. That's all I heard.
Before we call any witnesses, Judge, we'd like to make a motion to the court.
You have the floor, is it where you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to make sure you can hear me before I go too further. Judge, we don't, in this case, we would move to dismiss for lack of probable cause. At this time, when based on the newest Supreme Court case, I'm drawing a blank on the site. The question is, and Deputy Jones said it himself, Mr. Uziel Munoz Cruz was not in custody, nor was he, is there any probable cause to detain him when he was taken into custody? There was the driver of the vehicle, not Mr. Munoz Cruz, who took off and started driving. As Mr. Jones, as Deputy Jones said, he hadn't even committed any violations. I know my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he hadn't even committed any violations at that time. So there was no reason to stop and detain Mr. Uziel Munoz Cruz at this time. He was just a passenger in the vehicle. There was no reasonable suspicion, and there was no probable cause for the arrest, and therefore there was no reason to detain him, and therefore there should be no evading in this case. Deputy Jones didn't yell stop, and he was not seized at the time. Mr. Munoz Cruz should have been free to go, as there was nothing tying him to any violations. Again, the driver needed to be detained for the traffic stop violation of not having a front license plate. The driver is the one who drove off from the initial traffic stop. The driver off, but Mr. Uziel Munoz Cruz,
hold
there's
up.
no reasonable suspicion tying him to any.
Reasonable suspicion tying him to.
There's no reasonable suspicion tying him to any offense, any traffic offense, any violation of the law, and no criminal activity. The driver committed plenty of infractions. Mr. Munoz Cruz committed no infractions, and therefore there shouldn't be any cause to arrest him for evading. He is free to leave. If they were conducting an investigation, they actually took the driver into custody first. And when they took the driver into custody first, they had him detained, and the reason to detain Mr. Uziel Munoz Cruz for the purpose of evading. Therefore, we have no evading arrest. We ask for a directed verdict at this time for that particular reason, for no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, and therefore no reason to arrest Mr. Uziel Munoz Cruz for evading arrest.
Anything else, Mr. Freilich?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Do you have a case site, by the way? You said there was a recent
The Supreme Court case. I was looking for that, Judge. It is a recent case from, I guess, the United States, the Supreme Court, with a definition of seizure. Are you still there, Judge?
Yes, I'm listening. The definition of seizure, you said.
Yes, Judge. I believe it's Torres versus Madrid from 325/21. I'm downloading the site right now, although I'm kind of afraid because the application of physical force to the body of a person with intent to restrain is a seizure, even though the person does not submit and is not subdued. And it goes and talks about the Fourth Amendment, protecting people, Hodari versus California versus Hodari. And specifically, it talks about when a person is seized. And when a person is seized as to Fourth Amendment protections. And because my client was, again, we don't have any evidence that my client was ever asked to stop. We don't have any evidence that my client was seized for Fourth Amendment purposes when he exited the vehicle and allegedly ran off. And because of that, because my client was not seized, he therefore can't be guilty of evading arrest. But that definition goes back, the
last I heard was the very definition. That's all I heard.
I'm sorry, Judge.
I'm sorry, Judge. I heard.
I know. Again, the application of force does not satisfy what we're talking about. Yeah, I'm going to add this into the chat. Just a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
There. I should be uploading the Torres versus Madrid opinion. But at this time, Judge, before we present any evidence, my specific objection is to lack of probable cause to detain Uziel, probable cause or reasonable suspicion to detain Uziel Munoz Cruz for this offense.
Okay, I heard. Let me see what response the state has.
Your Honor, will you give me a few minutes to peruse Torres v. Madrid?
I sure will, because I'm going to find it mighty interesting. I'm going to need you to argue to the issue of how was he evading or what was he evading, because the officer made very clear that he had not committed any crime. No violation was his words. So focus on that and see what we do.
how you doing? I'm parked on the other side, on this side over here.
I'm in court, sir.
Huh?
I'm in court.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Judge, as you I'm sorry, I wouldn't go over that. May I have a brief recess? Brief
Go ahead.
break?
I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
Judge, he asked for a brief recess.
Oh, go ahead. I'll stay here.
Your Honor, may I make the same request?
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
Court will be in recess for about 10 minutes.